find it hard to believe myself, but I've been at the good ship BikeRadar for almost 2.5 years now, and in that time I've tested a lot of kit, some of it good and some of it not so good. With that in mind, and just like Tom and Joe have just done and the recently departed Ruben, we thought it was high time that I go through 5 of my highlights over the last 2.5 years of testing bikes and kit for BikeRadar. I'm not one that's afraid to kind of verge into the truly fringe areas of cycling, but a Tandem was even a step further for me. But I bought this with my girlfriend about 2 years ago, and I think it's the most fun I've ever had on a bike. While I originally bought Cecil with a mind to do lots of touring, and I have done plenty of touring on him, you may have also seen him featured in a recent episode of BikeRadar Diaries, where Joe, Ruben and I tried to take a local KOM aboard him. Now, as well as being a lot of fun, I can confirm after that experience it is absolutely terrifying as well riding a Tandem, particularly if your passenger or your stoker, to use the correct term, has not ridden a Tandem before, and I urge you to watch that episode because it's one of the favourites we've ever done. I think I spent about £275 on Cecil in the first place, which, when I consider it pound for pound, is probably the best value bike I've had in terms of bringing joy into my life. But since then I've given him a few select upgrades, including a nice new set of wheels, which means I can approach scary descents with far less fear than before. Of course, it's not all fun, and climbing on a Tandem is awful, particularly when you're doing it touring. The pace at which you climb is mind-numbingly slow, but it's more than made up for the terrifying pace you can make up on the flats. Now, I understand it might be a bit of a cop-out to present an overall idea rather than an individual product, but honestly, of all the things I've done on bikes in recent years, getting a Tandem is probably number one. Lastly, some will delight in telling you that a Tandem is a divorce maker, and I don't think that is strictly true. However, I think it is fair to say that no matter what direction your relationship is going in, a Tandem will get you there quicker. Second on my list is something equally controversial and to some of you probably equally as hideous as riding a Tandem. These base layers. Brynje, which is a Norwegian brand, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that name wrong, produce a line of essentially plastic base layers that have revolutionised my cycling wardrobe. The base layers are made from polypropylene, again I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, which is a totally non-absorbent fabric, which is actually quite unusual for a base layer, but that means that these function in quite a different way to your typical base layer. It's hard to see exactly what's happening, but this mesh is actually made up of very loosely weaved fibre. And while those fibres themselves don't absorb any moisture, what actually happens is your sweat moves into the space between those fibres, where it can then be transported to your outer layers. What this means is when you're wearing the base layer, it's very, very effective at wicking moisture, but it also just feels very comfortable. I've also found that although they are a little bit more expensive than typical base layers, they wear in quite a nice way. And this one is still really soft, and honestly, I would say 9 out of 10 rides these days, I'll either wear this one or the slightly finer mesh one I also have. I'm so fond of these base layers that I actually awarded them 5 stars on BikeRadar, and I would honestly say that for cycling, it's probably the best layer that money can buy. Now, I'm one for a bold look, but honestly, these are inexcusably ugly, and that white mesh has a horrible habit of picking up really gross stains over time. But with that said, the performance more than makes up for it, and you will not find me riding in any other base layer these days. For my third piece of all-time kit is something which is sadly departed from me now, and that is my Surly Steamroller test bike. Of all the bikes I've reviewed, and I have reviewed a fair number for the site, I think the Steamroller stands out as the one I have had the most fun on, if you excuse the Tandem. The Steamroller is a fixie, which I really enjoy. I've ridden a lot of fixies, and it's one of the most long-standing models in Surly's lineup. And it's this versatility and its kind of heritage which attracted me to the bike in the first place. It's one of those bikes that seemingly everyone has had, and everyone has their own take on how they build it. And for me, I wanted to build a mile-munching, gravel-shredding, fixie skid wagon, and in that role, it was perfect. I replaced the stock tyres, which were kind of big chunky Schwalbe touring tyres, with a set of Compass, which is now Rennie Hurst, Bon tyres, and I also replaced the brake, which was a standard dual pivot model, for a centre pool Diacompe brake, and with that, it was perfect. I could tackle almost anything, and I did some really stupid rides on this bike. I should add that while I was testing this bike, I actually had a whole clutch of much fancier and arguably more capable bikes, but I kept turning to the Steamroller. I loved that bike. It had such a smooth, delightful quality. It felt like I could do anything on it, and the position was so comfortable. I was very sorry to see that bike go, and though I've kind of replaced it in many ways with my All City Mr. Pink, the Steamroller still has a very special place in my heart, and I can totally see myself buying one for myself in the future. On that buying front, we test a lot of very expensive bike kit at BikeRadar, and I'm really lucky to be a part of that. But it goes to show that the Steamroller, which at the time I tested it was an £850 bike, is one of my all-time favourites. So price isn't everything, and often the most affordable stuff can be the most satisfying and fun to ride. Now we have even more clothing, and this time I'm going to talk about insulated gilets. Now I've used 2 insulated gilets over the last year and a bit. I've got this Rafa Breve one, and I've got another one from Pedaled, and both have again revolutionised my cycling wardrobe. I'm going to talk about the Rafa one because that's the one I've used more than anything else. But this gilet essentially is like a very thin face fabric, a kind of windproof face fabric, which is lined with Polartec Alpha insulation. Now, as you'd imagine, it's very warm, and that's not necessarily a good thing at all times. I run very hot on the bike. When it comes to kind of days where you're not sure how you want to layer, whether you're going to be too hot, too cold, I tend to find that going for this to add warmth is definitely the right move. You can easily unzip it, which dumps tons of heat, and those mesh side panels down the side are also incredibly breathable, so you tend to get some nice airflow into your oxters. Oxters are armpits for those of you not north of the border. Now, where I didn't expect this to be useful when I first got it was for summer training. In the evening, if you're going out and doing hard efforts, and yes, believe it or not, I do sometimes do those, if you get very sweaty on a climb, it's really useful having something like this because you're inevitably going to be sweaty, and as the sun goes down, it's very easy to get cold. So I actually tended to use this quite a lot in summer riding. I've also used this Pedaled one quite a lot, and it works in a similar way with a kind of pile insulation on the inside, and if anything, I think that one maybe wicks slightly better than the Rafa one, but both are definitely staples of my cycling wardrobe, and I'm really thankful to have them now. I find that the best measure of what makes good cycling kit is what you go back to again and again, and these 2 gilets I cannot get enough of. They are so versatile, and like the base layers, they've changed my cycling wardrobe. So yeah, a key bit of kit for me these days. Now for my final choice. Now I have taken heed of what my beloved colleagues have chosen, and I have noticed a pattern of choosing a controversial choice for your last one. And I am no different, and I'm going to name the world's #1 photo sharing app as my 5th choice, and that is Instagram. Yes, honestly, I love Instagram. Now I'm sure it's true of many sports, but I've often found that cycling looks at itself through far too serious a lens. And while that message might be fine for some, it's just not my vibe. And though I enjoy seeing what rides my friends around the world are getting up to, I enjoy nothing more than poking fun at the very silly industry that I am oh so lucky to be a part of, when it's often a little bit overly sincere. I should also point out that my core role is actually as a writer for BikeRadar, and honestly, I think I could probably count over a dozen articles that I've written for the site which have been based on really cool things I've seen on Instagram. Whether it's weird old stuff or cool rides that people have done, there's a lot out there, and it's a really cool way to see what people are getting up to, and also often to kind of be reminded of cool old tech from the past. So while it's very easy to poke fun at Instagram and the people who take it too seriously, if you approach it with the right view and you just want to show people what you're up to and maybe take yourself not too seriously, it's a really fun thing. And I always enjoy seeing what everybody's got up to. And please follow me. So there you have it. There is my top 5. I have no doubt you were going to anyway, but as always, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Am I right about these things? Are they rubbish? Is Instagram a hateful platform? Please let me know. I'll be sure to reply to your comments, and don't forget to like or subscribe.